Hello there, SLS 1101 students, and welcome to your Module 5 Assignment 2 Using Information Literacy to Examine Academic Strategies assignment, the last of your traditional module assignments for the semester. So congratulations on making it this far. Next up on our horizon, we do have the career capstone presentation as well as preparation for your final exam. But in regards to your traditional module work, this is the final assignment that we will be continuing these walkthroughs to introduce. So let's go further into M5A2. We'll come back to this chart here momentarily once we kind of know what that chart is going to be showing us. To highlight the purpose of the assignment, the purpose of this assignment is to assess the process of using the CARS system, which we'll learn more about momentarily, to showcase information literacy and continue your research on various study strategies introduced in Module 5, which includes all of chapters 6, 7, and 8 in your textbook. So we're going to kind of combine a couple of elements in this activity to get the most out of this assignment. One of those elements is going to be you selecting a topic from chapter 6, 7, or 8 in your textbook. Any of those study strategies, they were also referenced inside of your study activities for Module 5, but anything pertaining to test-taking strategies, reading strategies, note-taking strategies involving memorization and focus and anything else that can help you succeed in the classroom. So take one of those strategies that you want to do some more research about, and we're going to use this assessment to find out more while assessing what type of information we're collecting, and that's what's known as information literacy. Information literacy deals with making sure you're having valid resources and valid databases which can be easily referenced and that are evaluated on a professional standard. So we'll get more into that practice here momentarily. But for the time being, let's have a look at the directions for this assignment. We're going to come back to the idea I was just mentioning here for select. Select any term, strategy, concept, or idea from or textbook related to memory, learning, or any other academic strategies highlighted in Module 5. The study activities are available to you that you're interested in learning more about. And this is going to be your research topic for this entire assignment. Once you make that selection, have a look at your textbook, and I'll show you the PDF file here on Blackboard as well. It's called the CARS test. It's on page 155 of your Keys to College Success textbook, and it's linked here as well on the activity, and we'll have a look at that together here in just one moment. Once you have evaluated what the CARS system looks like, CARS, it's an acronym, and we'll see that here momentarily, we're going to do a little bit of research. So you're going to research that topic using either our library resources, that can be going into the library physically, or by using the online database for the IRSC library, or you can also use internet sources. One internet source that I would recommend would be using Google Scholar. And if you haven't had a chance to try Google Scholar yet, we'll do that together on the video as well. It's a nice resource. It uses the Google strategies to search the internet, it's only searching back to you academically reviewed and peer-reviewed databases, so you have an idea that they're probably going to pass this CARS assessment for information literacy. Some items you want to stay away from are items like Wikipedia. And if you do use Wikipedia to get kind of a start on an assignment, be sure that you're checking the sources at the bottom of Wikipedia. Those might hold more weight than Wikipedia itself. So not to say that there's not any valid resources on Wikipedia, but go directly to the source. And a good Wikipedia web page is going to have references at the bottom of that site. Go directly to that source and evaluate them to check for reasonableness, and stay away from Wikipedia as a whole and referencing it in any of your review summaries. So stay away from Wikipedia. And then lastly, we're going to use this format below to report both what you've learned and how you assessed and analyzed each source or site for information quality. So this is where your actual assignment begins. The very first thing you're going to do, and label this part 1 on your assignment so it's easy to grade. Label it part 1, label it topic selection, and here's where you're going to reflect back on what you learned about your topic. provide a background on what you learned about your topic, and use less than 400 words. A good rule of thumb would be here that you're going to be evaluating 3 different websites or 3 different databases, so I would try to summarize what you learned in about 100 words per resource, which will add up to about 300 words when it's all over with, and so long as it's clearly written and concise, that should satisfy your points here for part 1, the topic selection. This part here is worth 10 points. Moving on down to part 2, accessing appropriate sources. What you're going to do here is just provide on your paper, and again, make sure you're labeling it correctly as part 2 so it's clearly defined from part 1. What you're going to do here is just provide the 3 websites that you used for your research. So provide the URL as well as the website name. There should be 3 of those. Provide them for part 2, and that will earn you your 5 points for part 2. And then finally move on to part 3. And part 3 is kind of the heart of the assignment. It's where you evaluate information quality. We'll have a look at this CARS mentality here momentarily. But part 3 is where you're going to actually apply the CARS assessment to each of your 3 resources. So you have site 1, and then you're going to have the CARS reflection on that site. And then move on to site 2. And then move on to site 3. But for each and every resource, you should be re-evaluating using this CARS assessment. So when it's all said and done, you'll really accomplish part 3 here 3 separate times using the CARS assessment, which, as you can see, CARS stands for, is that source credible? Is it accurate? Is it reasonable? And does it provide support from where it got its information? And is it peer reviewed there? So I'm going to give you a table here which will help assess the CARS assessment on each of those 3 strategies. Let's have a look at what happens when you click the PDF file here that will bring you to the CARS assessment. This is also found in your textbook, and again, CARS is an acronym. It stands for credible, accurate, reasonable, and does it provide support. And what you can do is read through this table to point out how can you show that the information you're gathering is credible? How can you show that it's accurate? How can you prove that it's reasonable? And how can you identify if support is provided? There's brief descriptions for each of these components listed below. It goes into further depth in the tables underneath, but I also want to show you at the bottom some of the most powerful tools you can use on identifying inappropriate resources when it comes to the legitimacy of the content that they're providing. Is look for signs that lack credibility. If it's anonymous, that's a sign that someone's not standing behind their work. If it's only a negative evaluation where it's not providing both sides of the story, or if it's been evaluated somewhere else as being fraudulent, that would be another case that it's not credible. Little or no evidence of quality control, meaning that it's not going through any sort of peer review process. It's not providing a lot of sources. Is there bad grammar, or is it just written poorly? If you can look at it and it doesn't look like the information is up to the quality you would expect to see from a scholarly journal, something might be up there. But be careful with that, because the opposite is not always true. Just because it does appear to be written correctly, don't associate that with the information is automatically accurate. So speaking of which, let's have a look at information that lacks accuracy. If there is no date present, or if the information is outdated, and different topics have different components to what is considered outdated and what isn't. But one idea is to look and see if there is a date, and if there is a date, how long ago this information was collected, and is it still relevant? That will help identify the accuracy. One-sided views that do not acknowledge both sides of an argument. So if you feel like you're being persuaded to feel one way and not being represented on the both sides of the argument, there might be an issue here related to the accuracy. So make sure that that is not present in the paper, that you are getting both sides of the story. Signals of potential lack of reasonableness. If there's extreme or emotional language where you can tell that the writing is being based more on emotion, more so than data and experience. Sweeping statements which try to generalize a lot of information into one general opinion. Conflict of interest, inconsistencies, or contradictions, all signs of a potential lack of reasonableness. And then lastly over here, potential signs that it lacks support is where there are statistics, but there's no sources that back up those statistics. There's lacks of documentation, lacks of collaboration, of using other reliable sources. So the author is kind of just standing out there on their own without having any sort of relevant data or experience or other resources to back up their findings. So look for those weaknesses, as well as have a look at the items that evaluate the positive side of the CARS assessment. Does it seem fair? Is it up to date? What are the author's credentials? What are their degrees? What's their work experience? So there's all this information here, but for each of those 3 websites that you provide, you'll need to go through and do a checklist for credibility, accuracy, reasonableness, and support for each of the 3 individually, and also provide the information as to why. It's credible because of this, it's accurate because of that. Here's the reasons that make it reasonable. The author provided support at the end here. So make sure you don't just have yes or no statements here. You have to have the evidence that backs up that support. There is a rubric provided as well. Like I mentioned, the first part is worth 10 points. Keep it under 400 words, but keep it concise, keep it meaningful. Wrap up all of your findings that you're collecting throughout this process of collecting the information. You provided the necessary information for part 2 here. That one's worth 5 points. That's where you address the website title as well as the URL for that website. And then here's the big part down here. Evaluate the information critically. So this one's also worth 10 points. It's where you apply the CARS assessment to each of those 3 websites individually and provide information that back up your assessment on those yes or no's for each of those 4 elements. So the rubric's pretty straightforward. Just want to highlight real briefly what Google Scholar looks like. You can type into Google Scholar. It'll bring you to a website similar to this, and you can type in things like let's see, memory strategies, and that will bring you to some responses that have been scholarly reviewed related to memory strategies. Keep in mind that when you're doing these searches on Google Scholar, that not all of these articles here can be accessed for free. So one thing you might want to do is just open up several of these in new tabs and see which of the responses are available to the public for free, and then go further into those responses. But you can select any of the study activities or strategies from Module 5 to go further into detail with. Google Scholar is one of those sources you can use. In addition to Google Scholar, there's also the IRSC library. You can certainly go in face-to-face or view their website on the internet and look for their e-resources or their articles. So if you move to the Find e-resources tab and go below, you can search by A through Z journals. The thing I would recommend doing is searching by subject, in which case you can rule it down to education and search that way. There's information to how to log on to the database here below, and more information can be found by contacting your librarian as well. So feel free to get started on this assignment. If you have any questions, reach out early. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy your last traditional assignment of the course, Module 5, Assignment 2. Now we'll start beginning to focus more on that career presentation as well as the final exam. But until then, have a great week, and I'll chat with you soon. Thanks.